Last time on the show, we got a chance to talk about the NBA's 75th anniversary with statistical pioneer Dave Heeren. Here's part two of that interview.
I would say, the gold standard for ranking players and projecting drafts and, really for rating the best players both in college and in the NBA,
Yes.
which is something that you've got to be very proud of. As someone that also grew up a Knicks fan, are you excited about basically the resurgence that you might be seeing? Because this is probably the best we've seen the Knicks in some time.
I am to the point now where I don't follow the NBA as close as I did. I have a second profession now, and that's taking up most of my time. So what I do now is I wait until the end of the season, and then I do my ratings. I don't follow it game by game. I don't have time to follow it game by game. I really do have a second profession. And so I can't really tell you. All I can say is I'm real happy. I'm real happy. They did have 2 titles. But the disappointing thing about that was that a friend of mine, Rick Barry, who grew up in the New York area and wanted to play for the Knicks, was overlooked in the draft when they had a chance to draft him. Instead, they took Bill Bradley. And the first time Barry played against Bradley in NBA, he scored 50-some points, 15 rebounds. He was just so much better player that I to this day, I feel that if the Knicks had drafted Barry instead of Bradley, they would have gone on a run like the Bulls did in the 90s, because they would have been just that much better. They just had that one weak position, small forward. And Barry was great. He once got 38 points in an All-Star game, and that was the only All-Star game Robertson ever lost. Barry was a great player, and I still communicate with him because he was in Miami for a while I was there.
Well, I mean, it's the same deal more recently with the Knicks, missing out, I should say passing, but missing out on Steph Curry, who is arguably the greatest shooter of all time.
Definitely. Well, I say he definitely is the greatest shooter of all time. You run the numbers. And the best way to do it is a simple way: points per shots. And he is the only player in history that averaged better than 1.1 point per shot. And he's way ahead of the number 2 guy. I mean, you can't argue with that. He is the greatest shooter of all time. Now, he's got some parts of his game that aren't quite that great, but the greatest shooter of all time.
Dave is someone that obviously believes in stats, has worked in stats. When someone comes back at you in the sports argument and kind of denounces statistics, what is your response? Because I know some people might advocate for the eye test, or they might say to someone, "Oh, you didn't see that person play, but I've seen that person play." Is stats the way that we really can truly determine how great a player is, whether it's in basketball or even any sport?
Well, I think yes, to a certain extent it is, except for the things that are not identifiable by statistics. For instance, man defense in the NBA. The great man defenders, they just shut their opponents down. Now, if you see an all-star game and you see so-and-so against so-and-so, and one guy shutting the other guy down, like Robertson always shut down his opponent, then you say, whoa. But how do you rate man defense unless you get play-by-play and you see, well, he did this and he did that, he held him to this, and he wasn't playing at the same time that. It's hard to do that with man. And that is a great factor. And I want to say this, and I don't think it's coincidental, because the great athletes, James and Jordan and Robertson and Chamberlain, all were excellent man defenders. Robertson was the best of the 4, but Chamberlain could get up and block shots. They could do things, those 4 guys, and all, by the way, all 4 of them could jump to the moon. I mean, Robertson had vertical at least as good as Jordan when he was young. James has that great vertical. I remember Miami putting him up to try to block a shot against a guy who was not normally his man, because they knew that James could get up there. And Chamberlain once made a free throw by launching himself behind the free throw line and jamming the ball in, and the NBA panicked. Oh, we can't allow that. Well, today, people would love it. But in those days, oh, we can't allow that. So they made a rule that Chamberlain couldn't dunk free throws. The league has changed, okay? It's I think in some ways, it's better because it's more of a show. But sometimes the show, sometimes the players get lazy and the show becomes the thing when they really should be playing solid defense.
100%. And some stuff, as you mentioned, is just not quantifiable, but it is true that you could probably put, figures on just about anything. And when you look at the real in-depth analysis, it does provide better context about which players, might be trending in one direction or the other. But what, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the book specifically, because I think the book does a blend of both things. It obviously gets very heavy into the numbers, but there's tons of stories and anecdotes and things that players and fans alike would definitely, want to hear those stories, things that are relatable. Tell us a little bit more about the process, because you've co-authored 15 plus books, right? And at the same time, I guess about 8 of them have been statistical based.
It's 9 and 9 now, so it's 18.
Okay.
But yeah, and I'm always in the right place at the right time. My first job, the first early in the season, Philadelphia Warriors coming to play the Knicks. I'm doing the stats, the 10-day ratings, updating them. And I get this finger coming around me, and it's huge. And then pretty soon I hear this voice saying, well, what's my rating? And I turn around and it's Wilt Chamberlain. And we had this great conversation. And years later, I met Wilt again in Boca Raton when he was sponsoring an event for handicapped boys. And we had another big conversation. And he told me at that time that when he was chosen MVP of the championship series, I think it was 72, it was around then, that he had 2 broken hands. Well, I knew he had 1, but 2, how do you play with 2 broken hands? But the man, he was great. And he was a great conversationalist. He was a great man. At the end of this was a year before Will died. At the end of our conversation, he said to me, well, why don't you write a story about those kids? And he was a good man. And Robertson was a good man. He donated a kidney to his sick daughter, probably saved her life. And they asked him about it. Well, you're a big hero. I said, well, who wouldn't? He said, well, who wouldn't do that for his daughter? And there are good stories also about James and Jordan. One that I like about James is how he chose his teammates after Cleveland. And that was really in the Olympic Games in 2008. My timing is not great now, but it was something like that. And that was when he befriended Dwayne Wade, who happened to be having the hot hand during that ticket. So they wound up being teammates for 4 years. And in those 4 years, they were in the championship series all 4 times and won 2 titles. I mean, that's pretty good. But James, he was like Robertson in the beginning. He had no teammates, so how could he win? The best he could do would be pull his team up to 500 because he was good. But I think guys like that, Jordan too. Jordan had a lot of character. A lot of people thought, well, he retired. Well, what he was doing was he was restoring his leg strength. And he did, and he came back and was great again. But the man wanted to win, and he had a lot of character.
Well, Dave, I would say the book definitely has it all, and it's just in time for the 75th anniversary. Greatest NBA teams, greatest players. It's insightful. It's comprehensive. And for the fans at home, it is available at all major retailers, including online at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Dave, thank you so much for taking some time. It's always great to talk basketball. I hope you're enjoying that sunshine in Florida because it's pretty cold here in New York City.
Pretty cold here, too. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thanks for taking the time. Best of luck with the book.